On this week's Gridiron Report, we have both the Big Ten tournament to recap and March Madness set to begin. And it's all brought to you by Pins and Aces, our favorite spot for all your golf apparel needs. Use promo code GRIT for 21% off any product at pinsandaces.com. Let's get into it.
In the heart of the city where the lights grow dim, grit and grind every inch, every rim, from the underdogs rising to the legends that win. It's the Gridiron Report, let the games begin. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retire, Gridiron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on blast, beats thundering loud, champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Gridiron.
Welcome to the Gridiron Report, your Lions First All Detroit Sports podcast presented by Mic Drop Studios. Today is Wednesday, March 17th, and we've made it to one of my favorite times of the year. It's finally almost spring. Here it's snowing here today in Michigan, but all that aside, it is finally March Madness. For today's episode, we obviously haven't really touched a lot on college basketball. I think maybe we touched on Michigan State back when they played. But we're a Lions First podcast. There was a lot to talk about Lions-wise with free agency, how the season ended. So we've done a lot of NFL offseason stuff. Haven't really touched on college basketball, Michigan State-wise. But this past week, we had the Big Ten tournament that we had to cover. Michigan State obviously just got bounced in the first round with an embarrassing loss to UCLA. Michigan obviously went to the championship and then lost to Purdue. So we have that tournament to cover. We now have the matchups on who both teams are going to be playing this upcoming week for March Madness. A lot to go over basketball-wise. But I'll just say this first and foremost. Whenever March Madness comes on, the first thing that comes to my mind is that Tim Robinson skit. It's like, da-na-na-na-na, basketball, gonna shoot the ball. I love it. The weather's starting to get better. There's like 15 games on Thursday and Friday. There's no better time than this.
Oh man, yeah, dude, that the Detroiter skit is just so amazing. I gotta watch that after this. But yeah, dude, like this is March, man. This is maybe I'd say one of, if not the best sports weeks of the year. Like obviously it's a month long, but really the specialness for me is weekend one. You know, you have every team playing. It's so special, man. Thursday and Friday, jam packed with games, and then like you reload again for Saturday and Sunday with trips to the Sweet 16 on the line. So, it's just it's so awesome. And there's gonna be upsets. There's gonna be madness. Like, you know, your bracket's gonna be busted within minutes or hours. I don't even want to hear it. But before we get into March Madness itself, we should definitely break down the Big Ten tournament. It was huge. You know, obviously it featured both Michigan and Michigan State. Michigan with a much better run than Michigan State's abysmal effort. But I guess just because of this, we probably should start with Michigan State just because there was only one game. We'll probably spend a lot more time on Michigan. But yeah, disappointing for so many reasons for the Spartans. And the biggest for me, no national champion has ever lost their first conference tournament game and then gone on to win the Natty. So I don't want to say like, you know, we shouldn't even watch March. You know, all hope is lost. I think going into this season, we kind of thought this was more of a bridge season anyways, and that, you know, national championship aspirations are probably more next year with the recruiting class coming in. But either way, like it's that's a tough stat. But Michigan State loses a tough one to UCLA, a really hot UCLA team, 88-84, in a game where we were never really in it. We got in it towards the end of the game, but like for the majority of the game, it was, you know, at least a 10-point game, and we would, you know, Michigan State would cut it to 8. And then UCLA would hit a couple threes. Every single time that Michigan State had like, you know, one more run in them, UCLA had the answer. And usually it was with a 3-ball. But really, just I think my biggest takeaway from the game, would love to hear yours too. Our defense was kind of ass, kind of shit. So, and it kind of has been for some games down the stretch. And I think that's a really big red flag for me.
100%. So Michigan State loses 88-84, like you said. Really just, so tale of two halves, really. First half, Michigan State lost 33-44. Second half, Michigan State actually won pretty big with UCLA putting up 44. Again, in the second half, Michigan State putting up 51. So I ended up putting it together towards the end, like you said, a lot in garbage time. But, I mean, the name of the game there was defense. And it was so frustrating for me because it was the same. UCLA played the same. They just did the same offensive play over and over and over and over again. They either did a high ball screen, the big would come up, set a screen for the point guard, Michigan State immediately just forgot how to play basketball. The point guard would get downhill. Whoever was on the backside and, down low on defense would step in to help. Every single time the point guard would kick it to the corner for a three ball, and UCLA did not miss 3-pointers. Like, it was insane, which actually, looking at their numbers right now, would it surprise you to tell you that UCLA and Michigan State both shot the same exact percentage from three, which definitely didn't feel like that in the game. But that's exactly what it was. It was over and over again.
I saw that too, and I'm like, each team was 48%. Like, it just seemed like their looks were so wide open, and like we had no answer for any kind of like high ball screens, anything like that. I don't know. It was super frustrating.
100%. In this game, I think like you just hit the nail on the head. Like, this game could have been a lot worse because they had a lot of open plays, like open shots and stuff that we just couldn't defend, and they still weren't hitting those. So like if they hit even like half of their wide open shots, this score looks a lot worse than it really was. We ended up losing by 4, like I said. But it was so frustrating. I know Tom Izzo hates the Big Ten tournament. He's on record saying like he doesn't really care about it. If they lose in the first game, he doesn't care if they go far. If anything, I feel like Tom actually hates that even more because it's just more wear and tear on the guys. And that's what the Big Ten is known to do, right? Every single year. It's the reason we haven't had a national champion since 2000 is because every single, regular season in Big Ten tournament, we're just beating the shit out of each other. And then come March Madness, tournament time, we're left just basically all bloodied and bruised and we don't make any noise. So like maybe this was Tom's Tom's best case scenario, but it was frustrating to see a Hall of Fame coach not being able to like take a timeout and be like, guys, they're running the same offensive play every single time. Let's sit down and figure out how to defend this. And second half, that UCLA did the same exact thing. Like I said, they scored 44 in the first half, 44 in the second. So we didn't stop them anymore in the second half. Just the offense kind of came alive in the second half for the Spartans. It was weird. This game really wasn't anything like we've seen all season because the glass, I feel like we were getting crushed on the boards and we were getting crushed on defense. And basically that's what we've done all season well. And we haven't shot the three ball well, except this game we actually did. So it was kind of an opposite of like what we have done well all this season. I will say a few things that were very, I guess if you're going to take anything, if you're going to be an optimist about any of this, I liked what I saw about Trey Fort. It's kind of performances like that when that's how you win it in March, right? It's the random guys that like on a different team, they probably are putting up better numbers, but they just haven't found their footing or whatever with that team. It's those random guys who are going to step up. Trey Fort ended up, he just had 13 minutes, but 8 points. And I feel like they were all eight quick points when we really needed him to. He's 2 for 2 from the 3-point line. So I like what I saw from Trey Fort. Kurt Tang was 3 for 8 from the 3-point line. So I like that. Fears obviously 2 for 3 from 3. So like the 3-point shooting in general, I liked. Are you going to be okay with like the offense and the 3-point scoring that we had if we're going to be giving up that many points defensively? Like there's got to be some happy medium as like the defense we've had all year and this 3-point shooting we just randomly have found.
Yeah, and I think I was just looking at the rebounds too because we out rebounded them 34-26, and like just watching the game, I would have thought it was
crazy.
Absolutely the opposite. I felt like we were giving up like so many offensive rebounds. Turns out UCLA had 6 offensive rebounds. We had 16. I don't know. Maybe was I just not watching the same game? Like, do I have the wrong box score pulled up? Like that does seem pretty crazy. The turnovers. 12 turnovers is not horrible by any stretch, especially for a Michigan State team. But still, you lose the turnover battle 12-8. UCLA only had 8 turnovers. So I don't know, man. I just thought that the defense wasn't there. Like it's just you really have to clean this up. This was a team through probably at least half the season, maybe 2/3 of the season. You're looking at like the number 1, number 2, maybe number 3 defensive efficiency rated KenPom team on KenPom, and I haven't seen that at all in the last probably 4 or 5 games. It's certainly not against UCLA, so it sucks. Yes, you mentioned it, but going far in the Big Ten tourney can sometimes bite you in the ass, especially because like the committee is waking up on Sunday morning and they already have their 1 seeds. They have the bracket already filled out, and so your conferences like the Big 12 that are playing on Saturday night, I think that's just such a huge advantage. And then one more day of rest, obviously. So from that standpoint, I'm not like super butthurt that we got bounced early, but I would have loved to see at least one win in the NCAA or in the Big Ten tourney, and then go up against Purdue and maybe you lose a close one to Purdue. I think that would have been totally fine, but just as we're sitting right now, get bounced game 1. I just feel like you're going into the tourney a little cold. I'm worried about that.
And one other thing that we needed to point out is that like UCLA also lost one of their Tyler Bilodeau. I don't know what he puts up per night, but he's one of their best players, and they lost him just a few minutes into the in the first half. So we were going against a depleted UCLA team, we still couldn't stop them. Now, UCLA does lead the Big Ten in three-point percentages. They, as a team, averaged 38.2%. So obviously they blew that out of the water just because we couldn't defend them and he had so many open shots. We obviously did too. So they're a team that maybe just doesn't match up well. I feel like Michigan State should match up well against them just because defense is what we hang our hat on. Like perimeter defense should be something we're pretty good at. But you look at like across the board from some of the other UCLA players, they just didn't have, Michigan State did not have any sort of answer for Donovan Dent. He finished with 23 points, 3 for 5 from 3, 12 assists. I mean, just passing. And like I said, him being the point guard, them running the same play where he gets downhill and then just kicks it to the corner and they hit a 3. That's where most of his assists came in. But Donovan Dent just absolutely tore the Spartans up. Xavier Booker, obviously former Michigan State Spartan, ended with 14 points or 14 minutes and 0 points. But I feel like he affected the game more so than that box score says a little bit. I think it's just sitting in the paint naturally is going to affect some players when he's like 6'11" or something. And we had him in foul trouble early, so that kind of took him out of the game there. But we still weren't able to really get anything going around there. On our side, though, you had Cohen Carr finished with 12 points, Carson Cooper with 13, Fears with 21. Like I said, Kurt Tang with 13 off the bench, it just defensively, like offensively, it was okay. It was better than okay. It was a good game. Just defensively, you just could not figure it out. And like I said, if we wanted to win, if we could have won one game in the Big Ten tournament, that would be great. If we, lose the first one, I don't necessarily care. It just was frustrating to me that it was like a puzzle that was so obvious that we couldn't figure out. They're running the same play over again. And if I'm another team, or I'm UCLA, because we'll get to we'll get to March Madness here in a few minutes after the break. UCLA is right there. Like, there's a very good chance we're coming against UCLA once again. And if I'm another team or UCLA, I'm watching this game and I'm saying, okay, they struggled so terribly against us. We're doing the exact same thing. We got a good point guard who can get downhill pretty easily. You're driving. You get that first guy on his heels. You're driving and kicking. Somebody in the corner hit the threes. It's so easy. So it's like, I don't really care that we lost. It's just how we lost and the inability to stop them doing the same thing over and over and over again.
For sure, man. And like, you see this Michigan State team, and it's a similar team that you've seen in years past where like there is a clear blueprint to beating this team. It's, you limit transition. If you limit Michigan State and, get back on D, limit their transition offense, then we struggle all the time in half court offense. Like, if the shooting goes cold and we can't get out and run, we can't rebound, like it's pretty easy. That's the recipe right there. So yeah, it's tough, but there were some good things coming out of the game. You mentioned Fears, 21 points, 13 assists. He set the MSU single season assist record during that game. So I believe he passed either Cassius or Magic. I can't remember who was sitting at 2 there. It was Cash, yeah. So yeah, that's huge. He's had an up and down year from an optics standpoint, and
no dirty plays. That's a good thing.
Did not have any dirty plays, so hopefully that continues that trend. And he's only a junior, so I would hope to get him back for his senior year too.
He's a redshirt. I think he's a redshirt sophomore.
Even better. But regardless, he got shot his freshman year. I did forget about that. But there's some good takeaways, and like they could still get hot. They've had stretches throughout the season. Michigan State has where they've been extremely hot. They've beaten good teams. Teams like Illinois, also in the tourney. Teams like Purdue, really, really big wins. So certainly not counting them out. We will get to our predictions a little bit later in the show, but that's pretty much it for Michigan State. We can transition over to Michigan unless you had anything else.
Yeah, no, I was just going to do that. Transitioning over to Michigan. So Michigan, obviously, they went much further than Michigan State, losing to Purdue in the championship game there. So they had 3 games as opposed to Michigan State's 1. They beat Ohio State 71-67 in what was a surprisingly close game. I know Ohio State was kind of on the border, on the bubble of whether they're going to make it in the tournament. They haven't made the tournament I think like 4 years or something, but they obviously, Bruce Thornton is fantastic. He gave Michigan State a run for their money. So I'm glad to see that they're in. He's able to play. Ohio State giving Michigan a run for the money, 67-71. And Michigan went to play the Wisconsin Badgers. That one obviously came down to a buzzer beater by Yaxel Lendenberg. They end up winning 68-65. And then the championship game, Michigan loses to Purdue 80-72. I think the story of these games, all 3 of them, outside of Yaxel getting hurt in the championship game against Purdue, we'll get to that here in a second. It doesn't sound like it's going to be that terrible. Michigan really shot pretty poorly. A team that shot the 3 ball, I think, pretty well this season. They shot really poorly in this tournament. So against Purdue in the game they lost, they shot just 29% from 3. In the semifinals against Wisconsin, they shot 32%, so a little bit better, still well below average. Against Ohio State, they shot just 29% again. So a team that normally shoots the three ball at about 37%. All three of these games, they just really didn't shoot the three ball that well. And that's something I thought that they've done pretty well this season. And losing LJ Kaysen is, it's really going to hurt them in that regard. He's the dynamic man, the sixth man off the bench. He can provide a scoring, perimeter threat. So losing him definitely takes somewhat of that away. But I thought they've been all season really balanced with their big men of Amara, Yaxel, and Morez Johnson, and then being able to kick it out with Elliott or, LJ Kaysen or, Namari Burnett, even though he's like 40 years old, shooting, like I said, on the season, about 37%. They just didn't shoot the three ball well again in this tournament, and it showed.
No, yeah, dude. And I was just pulling up their stats, their box score. I don't know if you saw me on camera, but I had the biggest jump scare. I have no idea how, but some music started playing the loudest possible, and I freaked out. So I don't have the box score up in front of me anymore. Sorry about that, but yeah, they weren't perfect, but this a lot of times this is what you need, one last wake up call before March to know that you are vulnerable, and if you don't give your A+ game. And you go up against a hot team like Purdue, very, very hot. A lot of people are picking them Final Four, beyond. I'm not quite sold just from their body of work throughout the season, but still, you go up against a hot team and you're going to go down in March. So it's probably exactly what Michigan needed. I think they are still stellar. I think they're so excellent as a team. And a guy who really stood out to me, Ademara, I thought he was excellent. He averaged almost 16 points per game in the Big Ten tournament, over 7 rebounds, 3 blocks per game. This guy. He's what, 7? He's 7'4". He's basically college version of Wemby from a height standpoint, right? So he's huge. Obviously that helps. You can't teach size. And I thought he was great. But you mentioned it, Yaxel, definitely more quiet and maybe banged up. I think he'll probably be fine for the tournament. But yeah, game winner against Wisconsin, which was awesome. But just overall, 17. I think he had almost 13 points per game, 5 rebounds per game. So not bad by any stretch. But for him, Player of the Year candidate, one of the best players in the country. You need more than 12 points out of your guy going forward in March, right? So he definitely stepped it up against Purdue, 20 points, 5 boards. So I think they'll be just fine. But certainly a wake up call. That it is only their 3rd loss of the season. They entering the NCAA tournament 31-3. I think they're still elite. I think they have a very easy path. We'll break down both teams' paths to the Final Four, but Michigan's path is looking very good, and they're definitely going to make some noise.
They're going to need Yaxel to step it up. So, you just went through his numbers. He had, just 6 points against Ohio State in that somewhat close game that no one really kind of saw coming. So they're going to need him to step up. Their bench, I think their X factor is going to be Yaxel, right? He's 9 times out of 10, he's going to be the best player on the court, depending on how far they end up going. He's going to be the best player on the court. But their bench is going to have to step up big. And their Ohio State game, they had just 16 points, which isn't bad out of 3 guys. But in their championship game against Purdue, which they lost, they had 8 points from their bench, 0 from Cheddar, just 2 from Roddy Gale. They had 6 from Trey McKinney, but 0 for 2 from 3. So their bench is going to have to step up and give these guys some help, give Yaxel some help, especially like you said, if Yaxel's going to come into the tournament a little bit banged up. They did say, so he went down with I think it was a lower ankle injury, didn't get any x-rays. He said he's going to be fine. He just kind of was hobbling around. I think it was more so if this was a tournament, I think he would have been out there, but obviously since it was just a Big Ten tournament, we're already saying it doesn't really matter. I think if it was March, he would have been playing and stuff like that. So I think he's just going to be banged up. He's still going to be fine to go. But I think a banged up Yaxel is going to have to, guys around him are going to have to step up. The last thing I'll say about them before we get into just some more March stuff, I think Elliott Kudo's got to be a little bit better. Elliott Kudo, when Michigan played Michigan State, Elliott was easily, and I like Jeremy Fears to an extent. Elliott was, at least the first time we played them, a lot better than Jeremy Fears in my opinion. He adds them a different element to their game. Now the second time we played Michigan, he didn't have that same game. He didn't have the same X factor and the same it about him when Michigan State played Michigan. So I think he's going to be another one that's you got to get the most out of him. He only had 10 points against Purdue, 1 for 5 from 3, so he's just not getting it done there. Against Wisconsin, he finished with 15 points, and then against Ohio State, he's finished with 15 points as well. So I think there's a few different guys that you could consider the X factor, but it's all starting with Yaxel, because like I said, 9 times out of 10, he's going to be the best player on the court. And he's also going to be the oldest player on the court. So you need a lot out of your oldest, best player out there if you're going to make any noise, which I think they might be able to.
You hit the nail on the head. Guard play is so important. And Elliott Kudo, 4 for 12 from the field is not going to cut it. But 10 assists, that obviously is stellar. So he was distributing the ball really well. I just, taking maybe he was a little bit more efficient in his shooting. So that'll come into play for sure. Their freshman, Trey McKinney, you mentioned their bench, but he's got to be better. This is, a freshman struggling from game to game. That's going to happen. He absolutely popped off against Michigan State. He's tremendous. And so I think they're definitely going to need more from their bench. But I will say, I read stats all the time, tournament success, NCAA tournament success. And a lot of times you see coaches are actually shrinking their bench as the season goes on, as March goes on, and really just having your core, obviously your core 5 starters, and then maybe like your 6th man off the bench getting minutes, 7th man getting minutes as well. But that's kind of it. You don't see guys going like, 8, 9, 10 deep in March just because you really want to get your guys in rhythms. And so just seeing the lack of bench scoring for Michigan in any one game is not, super alarming. But I do think you need your 6th guy and probably your 7th guy as well to still step up in March, especially, guys are getting tired. You're playing 2 games in a weekend, and then doing it all over again, lock and load for the Sweet 16 and beyond. So they definitely need more, but certainly not a point where I'm like scratching my head or saying like Michigan's getting bounced in the 2nd round or anything because of it. Like they have so much talent, and they will go far. Even average play for them is probably still a Final Four team. So and anything you're getting more, it's national championship aspirations. They're that good.
Yeah, it's the same thing like we said with Trey Fort with Michigan State. Like it's just the random performances where like maybe some guys are tired, maybe some guys just having an off night, but it's the random, 6th guy, first guy off the bench that can come in and like just kind of provide a spark that might propel you, just to win a game that at one point weren't thinking about winning. So, okay, let's go to a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna switch gears. We're gonna step away from the Big Ten tournament and jump into the actual NCAA tournament, March Madness style. All right, we are back. Again, like I said, going into break, we're going to switch gears. That was a Big Ten tournament. No Big Ten tournament, I guess I should say tournament champion, not regular season champion, but tournament champion in the state of Michigan this year after Michigan was bounced in the championship game to Purdue. But we have the brackets now officially out. Michigan State going to be playing on Thursday at 4:05 against North Dakota State. We are a number 3 ranked team. North Dakota State coming in at 14. Michigan obviously coming in as a number 1 seed. They're going to be playing on that's going to be the 19th, which is again Thursday. They're the 7-10 game. Their opponent still be to decided. As we're recording this right now, they're going to be playing a 16 seed, so they are going to be getting one of the play-in teams. When you guys are listening to this episode, depending on when you're listening to it, you probably will know who they're going to be going up against. But both of them have, I think pretty decent draws. Let's start with Michigan State, just because they're on the side of the bracket that I'm currently looking at the moment. First and foremost, Michigan State side, they have a lot of the big names. They have the quote-unquote blue bloods. So, like, when you're looking at it, but you just know the names of teams and coaches, you might think that this is a pretty difficult draw. I personally don't think it's that difficult because when you break down the actual, numbers and everything, I don't think it's that difficult. So the number 1 in Michigan State's bracket is going to be Duke. Number 2 is coming in at UConn. Then obviously Michigan State at number 3. Kansas at number 4. So like those are all heavy hitters. But I don't know about you. I'm not necessarily afraid of any of them as I am, like in Arizona or like even a Michigan. Like I'm just not that afraid of them, even though they are heavy hitters.
Yeah, I think so. Duke comes in as the number 1 overall. I'm gonna have to disagree with you. You say both teams have a pretty easy draw. I know that like you can look at the blue buds and it doesn't necessarily mean that like in any like this year specifically that all these teams are powerhouses, but I think that you just you have this many Hall of Fame coaches, and I think the number is like 6 Hall of Fame coaches just in this region of the bracket, and that's pretty damning to me. Duke is great. They're fantastic. Not quite perfect, but almost. They're coming in with just 2 losses on the season, dealing with some injuries. But I do think that's tough. But I will agree with you in that sense that Duke does not scare me quite as much as like just Arizona right now, just being so hot, Michigan being so hot, being so dominant. I do see from that standpoint. But then you look at UConn, who has 2 national championships in the last like 5 years, really well coached. They're coming in pretty hot right now. You got even a 5 seed St. John's, who just beat UConn in the Big East tournament.
Yep.
and they are extremely hot. I think there's no way in hell that they're a 5 seed, but somehow they're on that line. So just a vastly, I think, overseeded for me, or underseeded, however you want to look at it. I think St. John's is going to go far. It'd be awesome if you had a St. John's versus UConn rematch in the Elite Eight, if that actually comes to fruition. And then even like an Ohio State, who's, you mentioned them earlier, they're hot right now. TCU has some really quality losses, maybe not so many wins, but just across the board. Louisville, who's another blue blood that maybe they're not the best this year, but still there's firepower. And then you got UCLA, another blue blood. Like there's a lot of teams that are really hot right now. I've heard a ton about South Florida and some pretty cool feel-good stories there about their head coach going back to Buffalo, where I think his father is in some kind of nursing home or something, can't travel, but is able to actually go to their game because their game is in Buffalo. So just really cool stuff. But just in general, I think this has got to be my group of death. It's just
Really?
there's too much powerhouse.
I mean, I get what you're saying, and you break it down like that. Like it almost is like I feel like the middle of the pack here is more scary. I mean, I'm with you in that, like, St. John's is very scary to me. TCU, Ohio State, I think both of them can make some noise. Louisville's battling with some injuries, so I'm not so much. Their star freshman is really hurt right now. But I mean, UCLA, we already talked about them. Like they're a different team than when we beat the shit out of them a few weeks ago. I would not want to play UCLA again. I don't know anything about UConn. I'm not going to sit here and act like I've watched a UConn game this season. But like this, Duke has injuries and they're freshman led, and when we played them, we hung with them, but that was so long ago. These freshmen got a lot more games under their belt and more experience and stuff like that. So maybe it's just me being naive, but I mean, Kansas obviously is a number 4 seed. You don't even know what you're going to get with Kansas. They have one of the, if not the best player in the entire country, and you never know if he's going to play or not because he's pulls himself out mid-game all the time. So I don't know. I could see why you say this is the group of death. I just like the main teams that I am worried about, or I guess just to say, and we'll get to our predictions here in a minute. My prediction for the national champion does not come out of this bracket. I mean, unfortunately, that's us included. But let's just go down, I guess, North Dakota itself, like this Michigan State's first game that's going to be coming up against. So right now, the line is at Michigan State minus 16.5. The over-under is at 143.5. A few things about North Dakota State. As always, Kyle, whenever we go through March Madness or, any of these kind of things, Kyle and I are not going to come on here and bullshit you guys and be like, okay, North Dakota State, we've watched every game. This is what they do. This is what they don't do. Like, we're learning these guys just as much as you are. But the leading scorer here for North Dakota State, the Bison, average 14.4 points per game. It's Damari Wheeler-Thomas, a 6-foot junior point guard, I believe. Their leading rebounder just has 6.4 rebounds per game. Their leading assist is not their point guard. It averages 4.9 assists. So, like, just out the gate, I'm not overly scared about. Obviously, I'm not scared about any of these teams really here. They're 80.7 points per game, 36.4 rebounds per game. Field goal is just 47%. I mean, the line, what did I say, 16.5? I think I'm taking Michigan State on that line.
I feel like 16.5, and I was actually looking at, other 3 seeds versus 14 seeds. Like, how does our spread kind of, stack up against the other teams in March Madness? And, I see a lot of like 20, 21 point spreads for other 3 seeds, and we're sitting at about, I think we opened at 14 and now it's up to 16, maybe 17. But that scares me just a little bit that Vegas thinks our game might be tighter than other 3 seeds. But yeah, I digress there. It's just, I just feel like spreads like this, especially first round of the NCAA tournament. I don't have any stats to back this up, but this is just me as a lifelong Michigan State fan. I feel like we just don't cover these spreads, especially as like a 1 seed, a 2 seed, a 3 seed. When we're ranked pretty high in the NCAA tournament, I just feel like we're this is a game where it's probably going to be a 6-point game at halftime. Then we blow them out late, probably win by 15, so like close to that spread. But I just don't think. I don't know. I don't think that we're equipped to just be blowing out any teams. With that said, I'm very confident first round, even second round. I think we have some pretty good matchups potentially there. North Dakota State, I don't know much about them. Like you said, we're not going to try to BS our audience, but what I have read, they're great in the half court. They can execute plays. Where they probably don't stack up is just their athleticism. Having guard play that Michigan State has, Jeremy Fears, I do think he's going to be able to, blow by guys and really distribute the rock wherever. I don't see us struggling so much. I certainly don't see this being a nail biter, or at least, God forbid. I hope we don't have a nail biter here, but I just think we're too fast. We're going to get out in transition. We're going to rebound better, even though we're not a huge team. We're not like a Michigan who can just, assert dominance with sheer, height and size. But either way, we'll be able to spread out the ball and pound the rock. And I do think this is a pretty easy win. I just don't see us like covering a spread like 17.
I guess so. I mean, you're so right in that, like, that's just what Tom Izzo does. It's going to be, when we've seen this over and over and over again. We've seen it where, Michigan State's going to be up by like 7 or something at halftime, 6 or 7 at halftime. We're going to be like, okay, we're a little bit nervous, but then they're going to come out and they're going to get on a run. Cohen Carr's probably going to throw down a few monstrous alley-oops to get the second half going, and then we're going to end up winning pretty comfortably. But yeah, I mean, just reading a little bit about this team, like you said. So they don't follow a whole bunch. For not being such a large team, physically tall, they do actually rebound the ball pretty well, even though their leading rebounder is only, like I said, 6.4 rebounds per game, but they do rebound the ball decently well. And so, I mean, other than that, it's pretty similar to Michigan State. Like I said, 80.7 points per game. The Spartans average 87.9 points per game. A 3-point range, I believe North Dakota is at like 36% per game. Michigan State at like 35.5% per game. So I'm not like overly concerned. When we're talking about spreads and stuff, I just get through. I don't care if we win by 1 or we win by 50. Just get through and get to the next round. But you want to
winning
jump
by
over
1 would suck. That would take a few years off the life.
100%. Yeah, it would. But that's what March is, baby. That's what March is made for. Taking a few years off your life.
I don't need that. I don't need that in the first round. Give me that in like the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, and I will be ecstatic. But first round, I can't do that. Not at 3 p.m. on a Thursday.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, so jumping over to the other side, Michigan, like we said, a little bit harder for Michigan just because we don't know who they're going to be playing. They're going to be playing either UMBC or Howard. I believe it's Howard. Yep. We don't know. They're playing their game, like I said, on Thursday, 7:10 p.m. So until we know who they're going up against, it's really hard for us to say that. Obviously, we don't have a line. We don't know what their team's going to be doing well. Like you said, when we were breaking down the Big Ten tournament, like I think Michigan, I personally don't think Duke is. You said Duke was the number 1 in the entire field.
Yes, I believe so.
I
believe it's Duke 1, Arizona 2, Michigan 3.
See, I think Michigan and Duke should probably be. Maybe Arizona up there too, but like I think no matter who Michigan goes up against, as long as they can use this game a little bit to get healthy, don't mess around, just get in, get the business done. I don't think the line really matters. I think it's going to be pretty extreme line, and I think Michigan can handle business pretty much against whoever you put in front of them. Especially just being the number 16 team or whatever.
Yeah, I think in the 1 seed, like, yeah, you're not looking past them just because, you have the Virginias of the world, the Purdues of the world, who now have lost to 16 seeds as 1 seeds. But yeah, you pretty much are looking past. So Michigan in their second round would play the winner of Georgia and St. Louis. So that they should, to be honest, they should sleepwalk into the Sweet 16. But yeah, UMBC, Howard, from the very little I know about them, scrappy but undersized, which is like, you could probably say that about every single 16 seed possible.
Yeah.
Throughout history, not just this year, but they just, either team is just going to lack the size and the depth to keep up with Michigan. Like, you might see spurts of 5 minutes where you can keep up with a team like Michigan, but certainly no more than that. And yeah, I think, whatever that spread's going to be, 25, 28, 30, whatever it is, I think Michigan rolls there. Not exactly my hottest take ever, but in general, I just think Michigan has a much easier path. But that's when you're the 1 seed, that's obviously going to happen. I think Iowa State, very frisky as well. I like them a lot. You got interesting teams like Akron in there, Alabama, who, they're just track meet central. Like, they don't know how to play defense, but they could score 100 points a game. So Texas Tech, great, historically great on defense. This year, I think they're definitely more offensive focused. So there's teams in the Midwest where I'm like, they can be frisky, even like a Tennessee. No one's really talking about Tennessee. But they had a solid showing in the SEC. Granted, down SEC year. I see Kentucky in the Midwest too. I think they're pretty garbage, but still, you never know. Kentucky and the tourney, they've certainly had their fair share of national championships, deep runs. So I think I don't know. Should we anything else on Michigan before I think we were taking a little break, and then we got some predictions coming.
Yeah, I just want to give my 2 thoughts on Michigan's side of the bracket, because you're saying you think Michigan State's on the group of death, and I thought it was a little bit easier. I'm going to disagree with you on this side, and I think this is an absolute cakewalk for Michigan. You look at this team, Texas Tech, one of the best players in the country, went down with an injury a little bit ago. I think that a lot of the early success was related to him. You look at Alabama, which you're right, normally has a really good, a track meet team. Their number 2 scoring player just got arrested this morning with a felony for having over a pound of marijuana. I believe I actually just saw a notification saying he was just removed from campus. So that's Alabama, their number 4 team without their second best player, who was averaging, I think, like 16, 17 points a game. Tennessee, I just never have any faith in Tennessee in the tournament. Virginia is a defensive team, but just offense, historically doesn't have that good of offense. I haven't watched much Virginia this year. And then Kentucky, Santa Clara. Kentucky is not the Kentucky of old. Mark Pope has been up and down this entire season. You look at that game, Kentucky versus Santa Clara. Kentucky's only favored by 3.5 to Santa Clara. So there's not much faith there. Iowa State, I put in the same category as Tennessee in that they've been good the last 8 to 10 years and always around that 2 to 3 seed. But until they actually are able to do something in tournament, I just can't trust them. So I look at this from Michigan and I think there's not really a team in here that I'm like, okay, that'll be the stopper. I think Michigan, as long as they, like I said, they stay healthy, just get out, take care of business, they should walk to the Final Four. And they are set up so perfectly that any smaller and I say smaller as in physically, they're not physically smaller, but also physically smaller, any smaller school program, like the 16 seed, even or if for some reason St. Louis pulls the upset against Georgia, Michigan's just set up with just so much size that any smaller team will literally physically be much smaller and will not really have a chance against Michigan, as long as, like we said, Elliott can come around in 3-point range and be that X factor that he was against Michigan State the first time we played them. Someone can step up for LJ Kaysen, coming off the bench and having that 3 ball. As long as they can kind of take care of that, I see the Midwest as a very, very winnable side of the bracket.
Yeah. I hear you, man. I hear you. Would love to hear all of your predictions. We talked about Duke being the number 1 overall seed. Yeah, Arizona 2, Michigan 3, Florida 4. We haven't really talked about any other regions. I personally like Houston a lot as a 2 seed in what are they in the South? With a couple of home games, I believe they have some games in Houston. Very frisky. Arizona's a team that it seems like they choke every single year, and I think since 2000 there hasn't been any West Coast teams to win the national championship, which kind of hurts their case a little bit too. But I don't care about any of those historical stats. I think they are so tremendous, and they've really just beaten the brakes off teams. So would love to see a Arizona versus Purdue matchup in the Elite Eight, trip to the Final Four on the line. But yeah, all in all, man, this is I really do like this bracket. I think overall, each region's pretty intriguing to me, and I think there's definitely a handful of teams that can win it. But I do think we're going to see chalk later on, and you're going to see a lot of success out of the Michigans, the Arizonas. Duke and Florida, maybe I'm probably not quite as high on, but they're it's going to be a little chalky down the stretch, I'm pretty sure.
100%. And I feel like every year I'm trying to not let that be the case, but when I'm filling out my bracket, it just naturally does that. So, all right, let's give our predictions for our Final Four. Who's going to make it out of each different region, our national champions, and then who is going to be the national champion. Before we do that, you have a word from a sponsor?
Yeah. This March Madness segment is brought to you by our great friends at Good Feels Cannabis Seltzer. The Cannabis Seltzer from Good Feels offers a new era of refreshment. Fellas, this is March, and March Madness usually equals, having a zillion beers with the boys while watching the madness ensue. But sometimes you just can't afford that Friday hangover after a full slate of Thursday basketball, and for that, Good Feels has you covered. Crafted with high-quality, natural ingredients, these beverages provide a consistent, enjoyable, and uplifting experience, perfect for any occasion. And the best part, our listeners can enjoy an exclusive discount with promo code GRIT. That's promo code GRIT for 20% off any product at shop.getgoodfeels.com. Thanks, Good Feels Seltzer. Yeah, predictions, man. How do we want to do this? Are we rattling off our winners from each region, our Final Four, and then who's in the Natty and who's winning it all?
Yep. So let's do each of our Final Fours. We'll talk about see how wrong we possibly can be, and then we'll go back and kind of circle back and who's going to make it to the championship game, and then who's going to be cutting down the nets on April 6th, I think it is. April 6th, the championship, April 6th. Monday
the 6th. Let's go region by region. And I would love to start with the so-called region of death, which you don't think it's the region of death, not quite. I do, but let's go East region first. Who you got coming out of the East?
Yeah, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here, just because I know I said that I'm not so scared of them, but because they've had a lot of they've had recent injuries. But at the end of the day, I think even though Michigan State was able to hang with them for most of the game when we played them back in November, December, like I said when we were breaking down the Michigan State's region over there, these freshmen that lead this team they've gotten a lot more experience under the belt. They're still going to be high lottery picks, if not top 3, top 4 draft picks. And at the end of the day, they're still one of the bluest of bloods. Coming out of the East region, it's got to be Duke for me.
They're just too good, and I know they've been dinged up with injuries, but it sounds like they got all their boys back playing in March. They're filthy, man. You know, you go an entire season losing only 2 games. You beat Michigan. Granted, it was a neutral court, but you know every game in March is going to be neutral court more or less, right? So I also have Duke.
Let's do our Final Four, and then if you're going to give one sleeper pick, don't be surprised if this team makes it. Is that and the team that comes out of this region? Who would? I'll give you mine. My sleeper pick out of this one is going to be St. John's. You mentioned them when we were talking about how they just beat UConn. Yeah. I think St. John's, don't be surprised if St. John's takes out Duke in the Elite Eight, and they're going to be the ones representing the East region in the Final Four.
Dude, I had, that's so funny. I literally had the same team, St. John's. I mean, Patino, we talked about it, but he's got these boys rolling right now. I mean, Big East tourney title over UConn. I just, when red hot, you're peaking at the right time, and still somehow the 5 spot, which I think if you're looking at a team like Duke, you're like, how is St. John's the 5 spot? And we potentially are playing them in the Elite Eight or in the Sweet 16 with the trip to the Elite Eight on the line. That's definitely tough. Definitely have the Johnnies as my sleeper. I hope for just a fantastic game if and when they go up against Duke.
Yeah, same. I can't wait for that one. So, okay, let's jump down to the South region. For this one, I think it's fairly obvious, and I shouldn't say it's fairly obvious. For me, the team coming out of the South region is going to be Houston. They already mentioned sounds like somewhat of some home games there. I'm a huge Calvin Sampson guy. He's an old school coach like Tom Izzo. I've seen him get to the Final Four national championships nonstop. I just want to see him win one. So I think Houston comes out of the South, making it to the Final Four.
Dude, we are in lockstep right now. That's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, I have Houston, very high in Houston. Again, I hear a lot down here. The local media living down here in Houston, and every year it's like you hear probably for the past 5 years, Calvin Sampson has his boys rolling. They have everyone. They're loaded, and they always have been. They just haven't quite gotten it done. Trip to the Natty last year, couldn't quite get over that hill. Lost to Florida, right? So every year is is this the year for Houston? But I definitely have them coming out of this region. Just guard play in general. Their guard play is so strong right now. They still play that stellar defense that that's the Houston brand of defense. And I mean, they had a really tough stretch about a month ago. Lost to Iowa State. I think they then had to play Arizona, lost them, had to go to Kansas, lost. They had 3 games in a row, three losses, 3 just stellar tournament teams, and couldn't quite get it done in the Big 12 tournament, lost again to Arizona. But I feel like all these losses are to just really, really tremendous teams that are very, very high favorites to win the national championship. So that definitely, all that experience helps. And I think I have a gut feeling that this is the year for Houston. Just looking at, don't be surprised, a little bit of a darling, a Cinderella team that I like out of the South. It's Vandy. I think that Vandy, they've really impressed me. I think they they ripped off 14 wins in a row at some point this season. I think early on they might have won their first 14 or 15 games. But just solid for not being a very big basketball brand. I feel like they're they could make a splash, man. So I wouldn't be surprised if they rip off some wins.
It's funny to say that, and I don't feel very strongly that there's really any team in this side of the bracket that's going to surprise everyone. I think Florida has the option to be, or the chance to be upset there. Obviously, you and I both took Houston. I was actually thinking I'm going to say McNeese is going to be the team that don't be surprised if they make some noise. So you and I going up against each other. First things first.
There we go.
On Thursday at 3:15, Vanderbilt versus McNeese for our who's going to make some noise there. Okay, let's keep it going. We have just a few more minutes here before we got to get to some grid of the week. So let's go to the West. Who's going to make it out of the West here and make it to the Final Four?
Yeah, it's a team where they just absolutely have collapsed. Time and time again, they collapse. And I'm going back to the well again. I think it's Arizona's year. The body of work. I think they have 12 wins over ranked opponents this year. just a ridiculous amount of wins versus really, really quality teams. Obviously, like 32-2 on the year, in well deserving of a 1 seed. Just beat Houston in the Big 12 championship on Saturday. These guys, I mean, it's almost like prove me wrong, and I know they will. They're probably gonna lose in like the Sweet 16 like they always do. I don't know. Like I said, going right back to the well. They are just too good, and I think their path. I don't know. I'm not looking at their path and being like, oh my god, like, there's some powerhouses in there. Like Purdue is very hot. They got the 2 seed, but Purdue's body of work throughout the year I thought was pretty poor for their standards, losing all those games at Mackey. Gonzaga, they always have a high seed. They always play no one throughout the regular season. They usually flame out in the tournament. Like you have them in the 3 line. I'm not looking at anyone else in that region and thinking like, oh my god, like, when Arizona goes up against them, they're screwed. I think Arizona, just kind of sleepwalks to the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, so we're 1, 2, 3 here. We're all on the same page because Arizona is easily coming out of this bracket, and we'll get to our champions and stuff here in a second. But Arizona, I think it's a no-brainer. They're going to make it out of this bracket. I'm not afraid of anyone from their side. If you're going to go with don't be a surprise team, a little bit of a sleeper, I got 2 of them.
We have to have the same one here. I know what you're going to say already.
I have 2 of them, and so it could be either, and I think there's a good chance they play each other. I'm going to go with either number 12, High Point, or number 4, Arkansas. Those are the 2 teams that I think, like, don't be surprised because, like I said, they very well could play each other in the second round. Whoever wins that game, don't be surprised if they make some noise and end up making it to, I don't know, maybe the Sweet 16, or, I guess they'd probably stop there because then Arizona would roll through them, but.
Yeah,
that's my
dude,
team.
and honestly,
teams.
like, you know what I said? I probably misspoke a little bit when I said Arizona's going to sleepwalk, because I do like Arkansas out of this region as well. I'm not a huge fan of the 2 or the 3 seeds in this region, but Arkansas, like, Michigan State played them earlier in the season, ended up beating Arkansas. It was in East Lansing. I think Arkansas has gotten so much better since that point. I'm playing really good basketball. So yeah, dude, High Point versus Arkansas would feed families. I was going to say High Point. Not a hot take at all. I feel like they are like the darling right now, the Cinderella darling, at least before the tournament starts. But 30-4, just offensive firepower, which I do think if they go up against Arkansas, another, high octane team, a Calipari led team, I think that would be just so awesome. And there's always going to be one 12-5 upset, or at least most years it seems like there is at least one 12-5. So that'd probably be my pick. High Point over Wisconsin. That would be sick. I'm all in on High Point.
Both those games coming on Thursday, so I will be locked into both those games. And like I said, if whoever wins that game, I think one of them comes out of those, their respective games. So we'll get one of them in the next round, I think. All right, so let's finish up with our Midwest before we get into who's going to be in the national championship game, and then who's going to be the national champion. And then before we get to grid of the week, like we said a few minutes ago, I want to hear just basically what would be a disappointment for both teams, how far you think they're going to go, and what would be a disappointment for both Michigan and Michigan State. Midwest from me. Team coming out of here, we already said it. I think it's going to be Michigan. I think Michigan walks at a minimum to the Elite Eight, and then maybe depending on who they're going up against, probably going to be like a Texas Tech or something, in which, again, they are already without their best player who really carried them for a lot of the season. I'm not scared until maybe we get to like the Iowa State maybe, and I don't even know that. So I think Michigan. You said Arizona's probably going to have a nice little cakewalk to the or sleepwalk to the Final Four. I think Michigan could very much be right there with them and just kind of walk their way to the Final Four here.
I could see it for sure. Finally, we have a different pick, and I promise we didn't like go over this ahead of time. Just randomly, I'll have the same pick so far, but I am going with Iowa State to come out of the Midwest region. I just, as much as I want to pick Michigan, for one, I probably had just too many number 1 seeds in my Final Four already. I needed a little bit less chalk, even though Iowa State's a 2 seed, right? But I do really like Iowa State's body of work. Just picked up a big win against Texas Tech in the Big 12 tournament. They have some actually really big wins. Just overall, they've beaten Purdue, they've beaten St. John's. Both non-conference games. They have wins over Houston and Kansas in conference play. They are definitely one of the favorites, especially out of the 2 line. They're 15-1 to win the Natty, which I don't see them quite having that much staying power in March. But I do think that a Michigan versus Iowa State game, I still would have Michigan favored in that game, but probably by maybe 3 points. Like it's pretty tight, and I think that Iowa State gets the upset there. So that rounds out my Final Four out of the Midwest.
Okay, so then my Final Four is going to end up being Duke, Houston, Arizona, Michigan. Out of those teams, I have Houston and Arizona representing both sides in the championship game. And then I have Arizona. Actually, no, I'm going to change my mind. I have Houston winning the national championship. Like I said, I'm a huge Calvin Sampson fan. I just want to see, one of the old heads, one of the classic old school, old guard coaches get it done while these new school coaches, fall to the wayside. I think Houston gets it done with their stellar defense. They're like you said, known for their defense or stellar defense. Kingston Fleming, one of the best players in the entire country. I think Houston beats Arizona in what will be, I think, a fantastic national championship game.
Dude, how did we have like the exact same bracket? Like, this is actually pissing me off a little bit. Like, we have the same brain. I have Houston over Duke in the Final Four. I have Arizona over Iowa State in the other side of the bracket. So Houston versus Arizona in the national championship. I also have Houston winning the national championship. So yeah, dude, almost lockstep there. We were almost the exact same Final Four, same national championships, and then same natty. But either way, like there's like I said, there's so much firepower up top and I could easily see, a Michigan versus Duke national championship. A rematch would be so awesome. Michigan versus Houston. Arizona I could easily see. Purdue, I was dogging Purdue a little bit. They are extremely hot right now. Obviously, just beating Michigan. I could see them making a run. They made it to the Natty just 2 years ago, right? Anything's possible there, but there's just so many good teams at the top, and I'm just so pumped for March, man.
Yeah, I can't wait. If we're in lockstep, I can't wait for you and I just to be both so wrong.
Oh yeah,
we can be wrong together. Okay, so before we wrap up the show with some grit of the week, tell me how far does Michigan make it? How far, I guess we already kind of went over that. How far Michigan makes it, we both kind of know just based on what we were just picking. How far does Michigan State make it, I guess we should say? And then for me, and I guess for you, what would be considered a disappointment? Like if they don't make it to this far, because I guess I'll start us off. I have Michigan State. I think no matter what, just Tom Izzo has really struggled in the last few years getting out of the first weekend. So I think anything less than a Sweet 16 appearance for Michigan State is going to be what I would consider a disappointment. I think they're not really as good as their record shows. So I don't really have them going any farther. Maybe they can win that Sweet 16 game depending on their matchup. But I think I have them going to the Sweet 16 and then losing there. And I think anything less than that would be a disappointment for the Spartans.
Dude, lockstep again. It's almost, I want to like disagree with you, even though I don't disagree with you, but just for good podcasting, I think I need to. But no, that's exactly what I had too, man. I have the matchup UConn versus Michigan State in the Sweet 16. I have UConn winning that game. I just don't think we match up very well against UConn. I know you mentioned that we've struggled in March recently. People do forget. Had a nice little Elite Eight run just last year with probably less talent than is on the team right now. Maybe about the same talent. You could argue one way or another, but either way, like we have had some success. I think a Sweet 16 loss like 3 years ago or 4 years ago. So yeah, but I totally agree with you. Just haven't gotten the big one. Haven't made it to a Final Four. I think we're pretty due for one. I said it before. I think next year is the year for the Final Four run. Just given that hopefully you're retaining some talent this year, and then you just have a stellar freshman class coming. So anything short of a Sweet 16, if you don't make it out of the first weekend as a 3 seed and as still quite a bit of talent, I think that would be a massive, just colossal disappointment. But with that said, I think I honestly don't see our ceiling being more than Elite Eight. So like it's a pretty narrow floor and ceiling for me. I do think it's a second weekend exit. And I'd be fine with it, especially if you knock off a team like UConn, make it to the Elite Eight. I think that would be just a really tremendous run, considering what we are, and this team has flaws. With that said, it's a Sweet 16 knockout for me.
Yeah, that's fair. I think we're on the same page, and it's kind of sad. I mean, I think you're right. People do forget that we have made it decently far, but I think it's just been like every other year we get don't make it out of the first weekend, so it's just why people probably think that. But okay, let's wrap up the show with our Grit of the Week. Before we do that, as always, Grit of the Week is brought to you by Pins and Aces. Pins and Aces is our favorite place for all of your golf apparel needs. Like I said, we're in the heat of this Michigan fake winter, fake spring, fake winter, fake spring. It was 70 degrees this past week. It is now snowing as I look out the window right now. So I don't know if it's going to be nice enough to golf this week, or we're going to be back on the ski hills. Whether or not you're actually out there, though, you can go to Pins and Aces to get your golf apparel needs. They're a Colorado-based golf brand making premium polos, head covers, and gear that perform on the course and everywhere else. Use promo code GRIT for 21% off at checkout. That's promo code GRIT, GRIT, 21% off any product at pinsandaces.com. Grit of the week, kick us off.
Dude, grit of the week. And I know I just finished like kind of dogging Michigan State a little bit and saying that our ceiling is not great, our floor is not great, but it doesn't matter, man. This is March. Grit of the week, Tom Izzo, and maybe a little premature, especially coming off a pretty bad loss to UCLA in the Big Ten tournament, but 28 consecutive marches in March Madness for Izzo and Michigan State. I just think that's so special. It's the longest active streak. And I know there's still probably a long way to go to get to, I want to say Kansas had like 35 or 36, whatever, consecutive March Madness appearances. But still, man, 28, longest active streak in the nation. I think it's really special. And there's been like a year or two where we've kind of limped in. And I think we had like a last four in appearance maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. But like in general, the body of work in March for Tom Izzo has just been nothing short of stellar, exceptional. And it's only a matter of time before he makes it to another Final Four. I know he's got a ton left in the tank. He's done a lot with a little. I will say, like, the last couple of years have been just absolute Tom Izzo masterclasses. I'm probably speaking more last year where, you're picked to finish sixth in the Big Ten, whatever. And you end up just walking through the Big Ten and winning it by three or four games. I think he has so much left in the tank. This year, again, you finished third, just another great season. Given, you lost some guys to the draft, you lost some guys to transfer. It's still like you had a really awesome season, your 3 seed. So, I think I just want to give all the flowers to Tom Izzo, and wouldn't be surprised. Never count him out. Never count out Mr. March. And a grit of the week to you, Tom.
Yeah, is it a little early on it? Who's to say? But like you said, I mean, Tom in March, historically, you never want to bet against Tom in March. So I love the streak. I do want to see a little bit more success. Like I said, it's been a little bit of time since we've had a Final Four appearance. So I think this is the team. Obviously, as we just discussed, I do not. But you never know. Like you said, never count out Tom Izzo. Never bet against him. That streak is likely to go on for a long time because, like you said, there's no signs of stopping for him, at least in the next few years with the next few classes coming in. So shout out Tom Izzo for grit of the week. My grit of the week, I'm going to pick somebody that we actually haven't really even had a chance to talk about at all, even though he's very deserving of that just because of the NFL, the offseason, what the Lions are doing, March Madness now. We haven't even had a chance to talk about spring training and the Tigers, but my grit of the week is going to be Kevin McGonigal. He is absolutely tearing it up for the Tigers down in spring training. Coming into the spring training, it was always the question, would Kevin McGonigal and Max Clark, two of the top 5, I think Max is top 5 now, top 5 prospects in MLB, obviously 1 and 2 for the Tigers, were they going to be making the opening day roster? Everyone assumed at the very least that Max Clark would not be, but the question was, would Kevin McGonigal be able to make the opening day roster? A lot of questions. He's literally done nothing but prove that he deserves it. He is still with the team as everyone throughout spring training starts to get relegated and assigned to AAA. He's still with the big club as they finish out the spring training. This spring training, he's had 15 games, 8 runs, 8 hits, 2 doubles, 1 triple, 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, 10 walks, and only 6 strikeouts, which is just, that's insane to have that much control. An average of 267, a OPS of 1.063, which is just elite. He is doing literally nothing but proving that he deserves to be with the big club on opening day as our starting everyday shortstop. Just before I do, throw it over to you, and like I said, I had a whole thing that I wanted to talk about. We just haven't had a chance to talk about, poor Kevin down there, of guys who end up going, because if you recall, he's never played above AA. He's never played AAA before. Of guys who had 0 AAA plate appearance, there's been 259 guys, and guys that end up having in their career a 1+ WAR. About 46% of them, obviously WAR is a wins above replacement, so 1 WAR means you're good, you're really good. About 46% of those 259 players end up with a WAR of 1 or higher. Of guys that end up with a 5+ WAR in their career, that's just 29%. A 10+ WAR end up just 20%. Those are guys that basically skip AAA in general. And that's kind of what Kevin McGonigal is on track to do right now. Most guys average, I should say, on average, players average 371 plate appearances before they debut. He's on track to hit 0 plate appearance in AAA before he comes to Detroit as our everyday shortstop. So shout out to Kevin McGonigal. I hope he keeps hitting. I hope he can be the answer for our everyday shortstop. I hope he's here in Detroit for opening day in 10 days, but we'll have to wait and see.
Dude, I hope so too, man. I think there was probably a podcast maybe a month or two ago where I'm like, oh, we'll probably start in AA and AAA, and work his way up, maybe by the break or something, the All-Star break. But now I'm all in. He's so filthy. He's 21 years old, so it's not like you're trying to bring up like a 18 or a 19-year-old guy. I think he's old enough. He's proved even in spring training how much he can rake. Granted, spring training, but you're going up against the big leaders in spring training. So I think he's ready. Even if he does struggle, I still think. I mean, who else would you be trotting out at shortstop or wherever you need him? I think he can play third base too. He can play second base. He can play everywhere. But I just feel like baseball's number 2 prospect. Like, just bring him up, man. Bring him up and have him ready. And I think he's gonna be so special for a really long time. Hopefully in a Tigers uniform for a really long time. But I'm pumped for him. And first of many grid of the week, so I can almost guarantee that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he hit a home run off of Luis Severino last week, and Luis Severino just almost blanked the USA baseball team yesterday or last night. Obviously, they ended up scraping a few across against him, but he already hit a home run against Luis Severino, who is, I don't know, a Hall of Famer, but like he's a guy who's had a very, very good career. So shout out Tom Izzo, shout out Kevin McGonigal, Grits of the Week this week. But that's our show. Thank you guys for tuning into this week's episode. You can find both Kyle and I on Twitter at Kyle_Marino and myself at Dutton_Tyler. You can follow the podcast itself on Instagram or TikTok at Gridiron Report or on Twitter at Gridiron Report 1. You can also watch these full-length episodes on YouTube at Gridiron Report. Finally, you can join the conversation next week by calling into the Gridiron Report voicemail for us to play and discuss on the podcast. That phone number is 313-306-7939. Call in, give us your thoughts on how March Madness goes this week. If any of our teams get bounced early, call in, hear your grievances, what makes you pissed off about them. If they both make it through, who's going to be the one that goes further? Call into that voicemail, let us know. Finally, if you guys like this episode, please take a moment to rate it 5 stars. Leave us a review saying so. Follow us on all forms of social media. Thank you guys for listening.
Thanks, y'all. Go green.
Yeah. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retired, Gridiron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on blast, beats thundering loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Gridiron Report, where the stories are proud. Tune in, bring the heat, make your fandom a vow.